This is part 2 of my Silk Road tour, and I'm Claudia Pfeil, happy being in Des Moines at AQS show, coming from Germany to show you some work from me, some quilts of me. Okay, this group is completely out of silk. I'm doing a show quilt once a year, so it takes me from June till March the following year to make it. But you have to be aware of that I'm still a shop owner, I'm doing still custom quilting, I'm still a mom of 2 growing up boys. My garden looks like a mess, but yeah, my boys are still alive. In 2005, I went to a French quilt show and I found a whole bunch of little silk wraps. If you have a close-up later, you will find fancy silks, even embroidered with paisley and beads. So I made this quilt. The piecing is not really complicated. I just used what I've had and arranged it in the color groups. The fun part was to quilt it. The space was the limit, and I quilted free motion feathers. I echoed and I embellished it with couching thread. And what I really like to play with is contrasts. So in the piecing, contrasts with colors, and in the quilting, contrasts with stripes, for example, against curvy designs, or high density, less density. And so you will get an impression of positive, negative effects. With this quilt, I have to tell you that I entered into the US shows. Everyone was amazed about the creativity and the colors. But I got the judges' comments back, and as I was alone in Europe, no teacher, long-arm teacher, I was really grateful for the judges' comments, because I improved after getting the quilts back with the judges' comments every time for the next quilt. So here they were mentioning that the binding should be better. So I improved my binding on the next quilt. Here they mentioned, not complained, about the little pookies on the backside. So I should take care of my tension. I made it with the next quilt. So every year I'm doing 1 quilt a year. I improved while reading the judges' comments. And this is Turnabout. I have made it in 2000, I have to check, 2007. And again, I love to play with the colors. I love to play with the structures. And as you can see, contrasts again, open spaces, less open spaces, round against straight lines. And that was really nice. Seeing this quilt hanging at a show in Kansas, I received viewer's choice, but I didn't know. So after a long day at a show, I put off my shoes at the banquet. Yeah, so my shoes were off because no one was seeing that. I was called to the stage because receiving the viewer's choice, and I couldn't hardly find my shoes because they were spread out under the table. I was so amazed, and it made my world to get a ribbon from the viewers. Parrots Island is for the theme tropical treasures, and yeah, I'm always trying to get the quilt in this way that the viewer is able to see in the first second what I meant with it. So if you are seeing a palm tree, tropical, yeah? Take a margarita and stay at the beach. I would love to show you the back. I really improved. Look at that. My tension, the binding is nice. I got good comments. And at least it has won several awards. So, and everything of this group is out of silk. I don't do anything else for the show quilts. Magic Mermaids is in 2011, and the theme was magic. And I used again the Hundertwasser idea of the houses. So it looks a little bit familiar to the house we have seen before. I added mermaids. I fused them, and I used at the bottom of the quilt, you will see some pictures. I transferred it to silk. Those are pictures I've made while scuba diving in Australia. Here's a lot of texture in the quilt. You need to have a closer look to find all the details. And again, I will show you the back. It's really nice, and I'm using the same thread on top as on bottom. Yes, I'm using silk thread. It's completely done out of silk, even the batting, the thread and the piecing. So I want to show you some little give you some little tips how to use silk, because I got so many questions here at this exhibit that I really want to encourage you to work with silk. It's much easier than you might think. I don't pre-wash the silk. I'm using like it is, and I'm cutting the silk like normal fabric. I'm piecing the silk as normal fabric, but I'm using a little tiny bit more seam allowance because the silk tends to fray. So especially if I'm using paper piecing, so sewing on paper, on water soluble I don't know, the paper, I'm giving a little bit more seam allowance than usual, and because I have to wash the pieces and after I'm done, and then it tends to fray, and so a little bit more seam allowance. That's the only thing. I'm using a normal needle, I'm using normal thread for the piecing process, and I'm steaming it. I'm using the silk really as normal fabric. And here I used a lot of free cutting methods. And for the quilting, after I finished the top, I'm using silk batting and wool batting, a combination. So I'm laying the wool batting underneath, the silk batting on top. The back side is always silk too. And I'm using, with my long arm, a silk thread. This is really thin thread. It is 100 weight. And it blends really beautiful if I want to have it blended. If I want to have the more thread painting character, I backtrack a lot of times around the same curves. So you should be aware, using your long arm, that you slow down your speed and get into the mood to find the right path again. After I finished the quilting process, I'm blocking my quilts to get them flat. So I'm pinning them onto the floor with hundreds of needles, and I really wet the complete quilt with water bottles, like that. Yeah, so I'm really brutal. And once in a while there is a risk of fading or that the colors are running into it, but I don't mind, and it happened here. I will show you a secret. It happened here at the fence, but that was the printed pictures. They were fading here into the fence, but that I'm explaining that was intentionally. So and it looks good. No one mentioned it to me before, so you know a secret now. So if you want to use silk, don't worry, just try. Use a little bit seam allowance and avoid to walk too much with the silk. So don't put it into the bag, take it out of the bag, just lay it flat, and whenever you make the next seam, that will be fine. Cordoba is made in 2010, and that gave me a hard time because you see, mostly of my piecing is free cutting, a kind of come and try and arrow and flaunt. This one gave me a hard time because I had to follow a pattern. It was not a pattern, it was, I designed a pattern, a piecing pattern from a picture. This is the mosque in Cordoba, which is today the Catholic cathedral. That gives me a hard time to speak. Catholic cathedral in Cordoba. And it is a real building. It has been built in the 9th century. And so I had really to follow the pattern. but it turns out very nice. You have the impression that you can walk into the hall. Yeah. And I used metallic thread on this, silk for the piecing, and I still love this quilt. We have, oh, you want to see the bag? Of course. I'm using the bag as well as out of silk. And here's a nice example for positive, negative, open spaces, quilted background. High density quilting versus open spaces. Straight lines, again curved lines. And I have only three rules. The one is play with contrasts. So high density against less, and colors. And one big rule for me personally, and I try to teach that in every of my classes, is think before quilting and quilt without thinking. As soon as you are starting to think, oh, what I am doing, that's gone. Doesn't matter whether you are using a domestic sewing machine or a long arm. So think before quilting and quilt without thinking. Fire and Ice is made, I have to check myself, in 2009. The theme was Fire and Ice, so I made it easy for the viewers to recognize fire and ice. The background is out of diamond-shaped silk pieces, and I tried to get the graduation from light to dark, warm to cold, even there. The frame should be like a three-dimensional window frame, and on this quilt are 55,000 Swarovski crystals. So they are individual set with an applicator, and I'm naming this period of the quilt, it is the last step, the rhinestone quarry, because yeah, it's quite a quarry, and but it's the last step, and you should see my sun garden where I'm doing that. The table is covered and the plates are with separate colors of Swarovski crystals. It's fun, but it takes a whole time. So I hope you enjoyed my little tour through AQS show in Des Moines. I was really happy to be here. Thanks Bonnie Browning for inviting me and my quilts and taking care of them. Thank you, and thanks to all the viewers and who are listening to me. Thank you.